Imagine waking to a morning so quiet it feels like the world itself has stopped breathing. The marketplace you once strolled through is silent, the laughter of children gone, the smell of fresh bread replaced by the stale air of abandonment. The streets are littered with discarded shoes, broken carts, and the odd sound of a door creaking in the wind. Every step you take echoes unnaturally, for there are too few people left to absorb the noise. This is not the height of the plague. This is after it has passed, when the Black Death has loosened its grip, leaving behind a land that feels both too empty and too heavy with what has been lost. Half of your neighbors are gone, their houses sealed with wooden planks or left wide open as if the owners simply walked out and never returned. Inside, tables are still set for meals that were never eaten. Clothing hangs neatly on pegs, waiting for someone who will never wear it again. Animals wander freely through the lanes, dogs once loyal to families now searching for scraps, cats growing wild, and even pigs nosing through the refuse without anyone chasing them away. The fields beyond the village lie untended, some overgrown, others trampled by deer and rabbits. The few survivors eye one another with a strange mix of relief and suspicion, wondering why they lived when so many did not. Life, however, refuses to stand still. In the sudden scarcity of hands to work the land, the peasants find themselves in a position they could never have imagined before. Laborers are now a rare and precious resource. Where once they toiled under the weight of near slavery, they can now demand higher wages, shorter hours, and even freedom from their lord's control. Some landowners, desperate to save their estates from ruin, agree to conditions that would have been unthinkable a few years earlier. A shepherd might now tend fewer sheep for twice the pay. A plowman might own a small plot of land outright, something that once would have taken generations to achieve. It is not only the peasants who feel the shift. The nobility, accustomed to commanding vast workforces, now find themselves struggling to keep their estates productive. Fields are abandoned, and without enough people to plant and harvest, food supplies shift dramatically. For a time, the surplus of grain lowers prices. But as the years pass and agriculture adapts, shortages begin to appear, driving costs back up. Cities that relied on steady imports see their markets falter. Trade routes that once bustled with caravans and ships are eerily quiet. Warehouses sit half empty. The wealth of the dead, however, does not vanish, it changes hands. A merchant's son might inherit not only his father's goods but also his competitors' businesses, left without heirs. Gold and silver hidden away in chests or buried for safekeeping come into the possession of neighbors, distant relatives, or sometimes opportunists who simply move in. A servant might suddenly find herself the mistress of the house she once cleaned, not because she schemed for it, but because no one else survived to claim it. Religious life is shaken to its core. Churches still stand, but the faith of the people is fractured. For some, the plague was divine punishment, a call to deeper devotion. Monasteries swell with new recruits who see the cloister as a safer refuge from the chaos of the outside world. Others turn away in bitterness, questioning how an all-powerful God could allow such suffering. Preachers speak of wrath, of repentance, of the end times. In the streets, the flagellants march, stripping to the waist and whipping themselves until the blood runs, convinced that their suffering will cleanse the sins of mankind. But alongside them, apothecaries sell charms, astrologers map the stars to predict sickness, and wise women whisper of herbs and talismans said to guard against death. Fear of another outbreak shapes every interaction. Villages close their gates to strangers, and travelers are turned away from inns if they cannot prove they come from a healthy place. People eye their neighbors warily, avoiding handshakes and keeping their distance in the market. Those who must travel wrap scarves around their faces, carry sprigs of fragrant herbs, or wear amulets thought to ward off illness. It is an age where a cough can empty a room, and suspicion can shut an entire town to the outside world. Children are among the most haunting sights of the post-plague years. Orphaned in staggering numbers, many are taken in by relatives already struggling to feed their own families. Others wander in groups, surviving on charity or theft. Some are pressed into labor, learning trades years earlier than would have been normal. And yet, in their resilience, they carry a strange energy, a refusal to vanish, a drive to keep living when everything around them has taught them how fragile life can be. Marriage and family life also transform. The plague has taught people the brevity of existence, and the old delays of courtship and family negotiation give way to urgency. Couples marry young, widows and widowers remarry within weeks or months, and alliances are formed quickly to secure property, workers, or protection. The imbalance between the number of men and women in certain regions changes the economics of marriage. A woman may find herself courted by multiple suitors, while a man with means can secure a wife more easily than before. Dowries shift. In some places they shrink due to scarcity, in others they rise because brides are reared at in moments of relief. Survivors come together for strange celebrations. Feasts are held not for weddings or harvests, but simply because those present are still alive. In the glow of firelight, people drink, sing, and dance until dawn. The church frowns upon such revelry, but the common folk cling to it as an act of defiance, a way to tell death it has not won. These gatherings are both joyous and desperate, full of laughter that often ends in tears. Gradually, communities begin to rebuild. Abandoned houses are repaired, though often by newcomers from far-off regions. Entire villages are repopulated with strangers, blending dialects, customs, and traditions into something new. In many places, fields that once grew grain are now given over to sheep, fueling a boom in the wool trade. Skilled craftsmen, blacksmiths, masons, carpenters, find themselves in constant demand, not only for repairs but for new projects to replace what was lost. Still, the memory of what happened lingers in every stone and shadow. The survivors live with a kind of double vision, one eye on the present, another always looking over their shoulder, waiting for the shadow of death to return. And yet, in this uncertain world, they adapt. They form new bonds, seize new opportunities, and discover strengths they never knew they had. The Black Death has passed, but its echo will shape their lives, and the future of the continent, for generations to come. Years pass, yet the memory of those terrible days clings like a shadow that refuses to lift. What began as desperate survival transforms into a slow reshaping of society itself. The shortage of workers never truly corrects itself in a single generation, and this constant lack becomes the lever that pries apart the rigid order of the old world. Laborers, once bound to the land without voice or choice, now find their demands met with uneasy nods from those who once dismissed them. The bargaining table no longer tilts entirely toward the powerful. Men who once worked for scraps now earn enough to feed their families well, and in some cases to dress better than their fathers ever dreamed. Others walk away from backbreaking farm work entirely, seeking trades in towns where their skills fetch higher pay. It is a quiet revolution, but one that no lord or monarch can fully stop. From these shifts emerges a new class of artisans and merchants. Survivors with a bit of saved coin or inherited goods set up shops, invest in workshops, or buy and sell in markets where competition is thin. In coastal towns, the wharfs stir again as traders rebuild connections, bringing in cloth, spices, and rare goods. Guilds strengthen, setting standards for quality and protecting their members from unfair competition. Wealth now flows into the hands of men and women who are neither noble nor royal, and for the first time in living memory, a merchant can wield influence to rival that of a minor lord. Culture changes with the wealth. Art, which once focused almost entirely on religious subjects, now dares to depict everyday life, landscapes, and portraits that capture human emotion. Yet the specter of death remains a constant theme. Paintings and carvings include grinning skulls, skeletal dancers, and processions of the dead mingling with the living, reminders that no matter one's station, death is the great equalizer. In clothing, bold colors and extravagant designs flourish as if to shout defiantly at the grave. People adorn themselves in silks, furs, and intricate patterns, not merely for beauty but to display survival and success. Women, too, feel the shift. With so many men gone, they step into roles that once would have been unthinkable. A widow may run a farm, negotiate trade deals, or manage a workshop with no male guardian. Daughters inherit lands and businesses, sometimes choosing not to marry at all in order to keep their independence. In towns, women take seats in guild meetings, manage accounts, and employ apprentices. While legal and cultural limits still bind them, the simple fact remains: the absence of men has forced society to accept their authority in certain spheres, even if grudgingly. Medicine begins to inch forward. The plague exposed the failures of existing cures, driving some physicians to look beyond superstition. Anatomy studies gain renewed interest, though they remain controversial. Herbal remedies are refined, and while astrology still plays a role in diagnoses, practical measures like quarantine, waste disposal, and pest control begin to take root as accepted strategies. The concept that disease might spread from person to person changes the way towns manage markets, public gatherings, and burial grounds. Education, too, begins to stir from stagnation. Universities reopen with fewer students, but those who return bring with them a new curiosity. The focus expands beyond theology to include law, mathematics, and natural philosophy. Translations of ancient Greek and Arabic works circulate, unlocking forgotten ideas in science, medicine, and literature. For those with the means, knowledge becomes another form of power, offering tools to navigate this changed world. Even the way towns are built begins to evolve. Narrow, twisting lanes give way in some places to wider streets that allow air to circulate. Cemeteries are moved beyond the city walls to keep the dead separate from the living. Public wells and fountains are better maintained, and markets are reorganized to keep waste and food apart. In wealthier regions, monuments are raised to honor the dead, their inscriptions both mourning and warning future generations. Yet for all these changes, the deepest transformation lies in the mind. Some live as if tomorrow may never come, spending freely, drinking deeply, and seeking pleasure wherever it can be found. Others cling to frugality, hoarding grain and coins against the possibility that disaster will strike again. Folk tales carry the memory forward, turning the plague years into a mix of cautionary legend and ghostly warning. Children grow up hearing about the time when death walked the land in daylight, shaping their view of the world before they have ever faced such danger themselves. Communities take practical steps to guard against a repeat of the horror. Grain stores are kept full, wells are inspected more often, and towns maintain quarantine houses for travelers showing signs of illness. Merchants grow more cautious with trade routes, weighing the profit against the risk of disease from distant ports. Families prepare wills with care, knowing how quickly life can be snatched away. The Black Death has taught them that preparation is not pessimism, it is survival, and yet, from this crucible of fear and loss, something remarkable grows. Freed from the unyielding chains of the old feudal system, people begin to see possibility where once there was only duty. Wealth, once locked in the hands of the few, finds new owners who invest in trade, art, and learning. The value placed on human labor fuels ambition and innovation. Slowly, the seeds of a cultural flowering take root, nourished by the resilience of those who endured. No one would call the Black Death a blessing, yet in its terrible wake, it has torn down barriers that centuries of tradition could not shake. It has forced change upon a continent, and in doing so, set the stage for a world that will, in time, give rise to the Renaissance. The survivors carry the scars, but also the proof that life can be rebuilt, reshaped, and even enriched after unthinkable loss. What began in silence and grief ends with a society forever altered, stronger, sharper, and unwilling to forget the lessons carved into its bones by the darkest years in living memory.